Hey, what's up, Plus Ultra fam? It's me, Plus Ultraman, and today we're gonna slash back into a timeline where Zabuza pulled through his injuries on the Great Naruto Bridge. And as always, we've gotta get to our quick recap. When we last left off, the Leaf Village Crush plan had gotten to its final and most critical stage, and the battle between Gaara and Naruto took place, but replaced Gamabunta with Gamaken, and Asuma was also there to help out. Everything else was pretty close to canon. Oh, and I've also got to mention a retcon in part 1. I mentioned that Naruto summoned Gamabunta earlier than in canon, meaning he wouldn't be in the hospital at the same time that Gaara tries to finish off Lee, meaning Lee would have died. This was not my goal, but luckily I did leave myself a little get out of jail free card. Remember, Zabuza was not fully healed yet. He just so happens to have to return to the hospital on the same day. Let's say to maybe get stitches out or something like that. Sensing the bloodlust from the Jinchuriki, Zabuza uses the hidden mist jutsu and appears in the room, using as much of his killing intent as he could and threatening Gaara to back off. Even if this didn't exactly scare Gaara, it would have alerted other people to his presence. So in this timeline, Zabuza is the one to save Lee. But with that out of the way, let's jump back into this story. In the days following the attack on the Leaf, we sadly have to lay the third Hokage to rest and pass on the Will of Fire to a new generation. Because of this, the search for the fifth Hokage is started, but unlike the original timeline, where we're used to Jiraiya and later Tsunade being nominated, here there are 3 names currently in the running: Jiraiya, Tsunade, and surprisingly, Asuma Sarutobi. You see, because he had been involved with a battle against Yukaku, most people took this to mean that he did it almost single-handedly. Couple that with him being the son of the third, and you end up with Asuma having a lot of backing as a candidate for being the Hokage. Even Jiraiya, when speaking with the elders, can see the benefits of Asuma becoming the fifth. It probably wasn't a bad choice at all. While not as powerful as his father, with some more training, he could possibly try and bridge that gap and become even more powerful. That said, he definitely wanted to ensure that he wouldn't have to be in the running anymore. So he still offers to track down Tsunade, telling her there was someone else eligible might even help her to come with them, since she wouldn't have to be the Hokage for sure. And Jiraiya would be a lot more excited about taking Naruto with him. He trained with Zabuza in the last month, so he hasn't really had any alone time to really get to know him. Elsewhere in the village, Kakashi still meets up with Sasuke and bumps into Kurenai and Asuma. He would still tip them off to the suspicious characters currently in the tea shop. Skipping ahead, the initial part of the confrontation with Itachi and Kisame would go very similar until we reach the point where Kakashi arrives, because with him is Zabuza. The other Jonin is in the village, and it's possible that Kakashi would have went to find him. That said, it's also possible to argue that if Kakashi didn't go to find Guy, then he probably wouldn't try to find Zabuza as well. But I think you could argue that Kakashi knowing of another capable Jonin in the village, it would only make sense to bring him along, since he is worried about Kurenai and Asuma. Or we could just have Zabuza in some way sense Kisame in the village and go after him that way. Either way, Zabuza arrives to this battle. Seeing and recognizing Kisame, Zabuza decides to end the fight immediately with the silent killing technique. As the hidden mist jutsu spreads around the area, Zabuza moves without a single noise until reaching his blind spot. Poised to strike Kisame from behind and end him with a single blow, he even charges up his arms with his chakra for more power on the swing. But just before he's able to rend Kisame in two, the other man turns towards him and catches his blade with virtually no effort. A single flick of the wrist is all it takes to snap part of the sword away and break it, while a brutal roundhouse kick knocks Zabuza through the guard railing. That was pathetic, little Zabuza. You've gotten no stronger at all, have you? But Kisame did pause. The mist Zabuza had cast was much thicker than normal. In fact, moving in it actually soaks everyone. Then, the voice of Kakashi was heard yelling out, telling Asuma and Kurenai to move out of it. He then yelled out, "Collaboration," paralyzing mist, and the sounds of the lightning blade bursting to life could be heard. Just as the Leaf Shinobi jumped out of the cloud, so did Itachi, being the wiser, falling himself. Kisame, too stubborn and ignorant, was shocked as electricity flowed through the mist, paralyzing him. Kakashi rushed forward, trying to impale Kisame, but he had to retreat as the mist was sliced apart by Samahara. Your chakra isn't half bad, Kakashi Hatake. Meanwhile, Zabuza climbed from the water, notably sporting a large cut that was bleeding profusely, but the blood was dripping onto his blade, causing it to start to rebuild itself. He told Kakashi to let him handle Kisame. He wasn't in the mood to deal with another Sharingan user copying him like some damn monkey. So, Kakashi gets Kurenai to team up with him, which would likely lead to the same outcome as canon, with Kakashi being caught in the Tsukuyomi. So instead of watching Kakashi get tortured for 3 days, let's focus on Zabuza facing off against Kisame. Luckily, Asuma is smart enough to try and team up with him, though Zabuza is against it. That said, Zabuza isn't dumb. He knows he's terribly outmatched against Kisame, but this is a matter of his pride. He does see the value in beating Kisame at all, instead of alone, where he could be injured or even worse. Dying was not an option right now. He carried too much on his shoulders to go down. That brat Naruto, the Leaf Village, his comrades, and especially Haku. He owed it to them to live no matter what and help them accomplish their ambitions. So reluctantly, he accepts Asuma's aid and gives him a quick game plan. Using their chakra against Kisame would be a big mistake. You'd only be feeding his broadsword your chakra, and actually damaging him wasn't really guaranteed. No, their only option was raw physical power and overwhelming him with numbers. Seeing as how Zabuza knows more about the opponent, Asuma trusts him and decides to follow his lead. From here, the real battle begins, with Zabuza going at Kisame head on and forcing the older ninja to block with Samahara as he unloads a powerful barrage of slashes, turning his own sword into a blur. Kisame wasn't having trouble with the two at all. In fact, he was really just curious to see what Zabuza could do when going all out. And he was curious as to what this plan was. Anytime Asuma would circle around them to try and attack him from behind, he'd easily dodge it or avoid it some other way. This became the rhythm of the fight, and it seemed completely useless. Asuma had barely even nicked Kisame before, and after that, he barely got close to him at all. But finally, Kisame gets tired of this, and strikes out, smashing Samahara into Zabuza's Executioner's Blade, over and over, showing exactly who was the stronger of the two, physically, and breaking the Executioner's Blade almost down to the hilt, from blocking the opponent's heavier weapon. Zabuza was pushed away, already hurt, disheveled, and exhausted. In desperation, he actually chucks the shattered blade at Kisame, who simply deflects it. Kisame chided Zabuza for throwing away his weapon, taunting him by saying that it was unbecoming of one of the 7 ninja swordsmen to do so. He then slashed at his junior with the shark-skinned sword, planning to shred him, but instead of an explosion of blood, Zabuza splashed away his water, a water clone, and a damn good one at that. But this begs the question, where was the real Zabuza? The question was answered as the sound of a transformation dispelling was heard above him, and afterwards, Zabuza landed on the part of Samahara that was still wrapped in cloth, trying to wrestle the sword away from Kisame. The fool, didn't he realize he'd only made it easier to be cut into ribbons? Samahara then cut up all its coverings, and, much more importantly, cut Zabuza up as well. The younger shinobi yelled out in pain, but held on tightly. He learned this kind of reckless stupidity from the #1 hyperactive knuckle-headed ninja and future Hokage, and he'd make it work. He then slammed both his feet into Kisame's skull in a ruthless Bowser-style dropkick, and finally was able to wrestle the sword away from him. As Zabuza passes out, he yells to Asuma to go now. Kisame, now sporting a bloody nose, then remembered he had 2 opponents, just as Asuma seemingly teleported in front of him, his trench knives at the ready. Kisame simply formed a single hand sign to make a water prison in front of him, but Asuma blew out a cloud of ash right into his face and igniting it, causing Kisame's cloak to burn up as he jumped away. He thought he was safe, but through the fire, Asuma flew towards him, now holding the still broken Executioner's Blade. When did Zabuza even pass it to him? Asuma roared and swung the sword with all his might, pushing his chakra into it to extend the blade like he did with his trench knives. But just before he cleaved through Kisame, the shark-faced shinobi laughed, and a shark made of water appeared between them, catching the blade and biting down on it. Asuma panicked, but it was too late, and the shark bomb jutsu detonated right in his face, blowing him away and knocking him out cold. Kisame had to admit, that wasn't half bad, but he did win. As he stalked towards the unconscious and floating Zabuza to retrieve Samahara, he considered letting him live for another good fight later on, but ultimately, he decided against it and prepared for the final strike. But before he could land it, a loud and youthful call of dynamic entry rang out, and a foot drove into Kisame's chest hard, knocking him across the water. Might Guy announced his presence, and Kisame got excited, believing he'd finally found a beast of battle worth his time. Unfortunately, at that moment, Itachi ordered for them to pull out. They were catching way too much attention. After the battle, the Jonin still take Kakashi and the other injured back to rest, and Sasuke still walks in on them, confused as to why Kakashi, Zabuza, and Asuma were hurt. He asks why, and the same idiotic Chunin mentions Itachi, causing Sasuke to run off. Now, I want to leave the next part of the story up to you guys. Zabuza is conscious and bandaged up, so he decides he'd go after Sasuke to make sure he didn't get hurt, as he cared about Kakashi's other students. but the other Jonin try to get him to stay and rest. This causes an argument, but Guy finally pipes up to convince Zabuza that he would go. So, is Guy the one to go, or does Zabuza convince the group to let him go? All up to you guys, so be sure to vote in the iCard. Finally, before I go, I want to ask you guys to please hit the notification bell. YouTube is making changes once again and making it easier and easier to lose my content in your subscription feed, and hitting the bell just ensures you get notified when I upload. And trust me, that helps me out way more than you probably think it does. Watching the videos is a very big part of supporting the channel, so I'd really appreciate if you guys did that for me. Other than that, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and as always, go beyond plus ultra. See you guys next time.